Welcome everybody to Donington Park and the penultimate round of the 2019 TCR UK Championship and the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy, of course. The biggest grid we've had all year, this is. We've got 13 cars that look to be set to take the start for our first race. We've got a championship going down to the wire in TCR UK between two young up-and-coming touring car stars of the future. And we've got a damp and greasy circuit. It's not really wet, it's not really dry though either, so the tyre choices that the teams are going to have to make now are going to be fascinating, and that's one thing that hopefully we'll be able to try and get some information for in a minute when Bryn Lucas makes his way down onto the grid. We'll see if we can figure out exactly what everyone's doing, because it's very similar right now to the conditions that we had for free practice yesterday morning. And in that free practice session, some drivers went for slicks, some went for wets, and as if we needed any proof as to how slippery it is, that is our first spinner of the day, and we haven't even got to the grid yet. That's Will Neal, one of the two racing sons of British Touring Car champion Matt Neal, and that's actually Matt Neal's 2019 spec BTCC car that he's racing this weekend in the Touring Car Trophy element of the race. And Will Neal has had a spin down at the old hairpin on cold tyres, and I think we might be able to guess that he's gone out on cold slick tyres to try and see exactly what grip levels we've got. But as you can see, there's a drying line that's forming, but to overtake you'll have to go offline. Not all of the circuit is dry on the racing line either, so some of the parts of the track seem to be drying out a little bit more slowly than others, and it all just adds to the really very tense atmosphere that we've got this weekend at Donington Park with this championship decider. Once again, for the second year, TCR UK is going down to the very last round of the season. Last year, of course, it was Daniel Lloyd who pipped Dolly Taylor to the crown. And he actually won it in this equivalent race, because Dan Lloyd won the championship a year ago with a race to spare. This time around, that's a little bit less likely to happen, because the points cushion that our championship leader, James Turkington, has over this man, Lewis Kent, is a little bit smaller than Dan Lloyd enjoyed 12 minutes ago. 16 points is the margin. It was 19 points going into this weekend, but you score points in qualifying. The top 5 TCR cars on the grid score bonus points. 5 for first, 4 for second, then 3, 2 and 1 respectively for third, fourth and fifth. And Lewis Kent, whilst he starts 4th on the grid overall, he is the 3rd highest TCR UK entry, as that means that he scores 3 nice juicy bonus championship points, which means that his points total has already improved from 117 points to 120 points. James Turkington, though, despite actually spending a lot of the session ahead of Lewis Kent on the timing sheet, on the very final lap of the session, Lewis managed to find quite a chunk of time and out-qualified his rival, and in doing so, knocked Turkington out of the top 5. So James Turkington starts 7th on the grid, 6th within TCR UK, and that actually means that he doesn't score any bonus points at all, so the gap is already coming down, and that will not be making the Northern Irishman particularly happy. A glimpse of Matt Neal there. There's Darryl Wilson, who's actually on TCR pole sitter, 2nd on the grid overall, but that was his first ever pole position in TCR, and the Vauxhall Astra, which is being assisted this weekend, that team, family-run team, of course, the DW Racing Squad, who are changing to slick tyres. That's interesting. So they clearly believe that it's dry enough out there, or at least will be by the end of the race, for slick tyres to be the way to go. But yeah, the DW Racing Squad being helped by some German engineers from Opel, who will come over to help them. That sort of transformed the car, they've been saying. Certainly his pace in qualifying yesterday was remarkable. 6/10 quicker than he went in qualifying here last year, equivalent for the class pole position. This is the man, though, that's on the overall pole position, and he is our front runner in the Touring Car Trophy element of this series. That is Henry Neal in the older generation NGTC Honda Civic touring car that he's been competing in all season long. Henry Neal has had more victories in the TCT this year than anybody else. As you can see, about to hear, I think, from Bryn Lucas down on the grid, who will be in amongst it all, and he'll be hopefully able to catch up with a few of the drivers. But yes, Henry Neal on pole position outright, but the points battle we're watching for today will be between the TCR cars. So the TCT cars don't score points. There are trophies available, though, for the TCT car, or TCT class winner, and there is a sort of invisible point system as well, which the organisers use to evaluate who has been the strongest TCT driver of the year. But the only official championship that we're seeing here is the TCR UK one, which has its biggest entry of the year as well, with 6 TCR cars on the grid, and they're all very close together as well. 2nd through to 7th on the grid is where we find our TCR runners, and they're all within half a second of each other in a fully dry session yesterday as well, so the track conditions were pretty good, and indeed the top 8 cars on the overall grid are covered by 6.5 tenths. So it's extremely close between the top 2/3 of the field. And that includes a couple of new names. We caught a glimpse just a moment ago of the number 33 Seat Cupra, which is, I believe, the car that Carl Swift competed in last year and for the first round of this year's championship. That's being driven by British touring car star Adam Morgan, a multiple race winner in his Mercedes A-Class NGTC car. We have got more NGTC cars racing this weekend as well, so other cars outside of the TCR class. 3 of them, in fact, coming from Team Hard, and their VW Passats, which are being driven not by their BTCC regulars, but by Darren Lewis, Paul Taylor and Josh Coggan, and they start 9th, 10th, 11th, respectively, on the grid. But they are 2019 spec BTCC cars, which are now eligible to run in this championship now that the BTCC season's finished. And they are using this as a bit of a test session to evaluate whether maybe they want to make the leap up into the BTCC next year, which of course is what the Touring Car Trophy was always designed to be, really. Also welcoming into the fold this weekend in the TCT class, Richard Woods in a Super 2000 Generation 4 Focus. He had a few mechanical issues yesterday, though, so lined up at the back of the grid, but I don't think that's truly representative of his pace. And another new name that we welcome into the TCR fold this weekend is Alex Morgan. Well, I say new name, a returning name, because Alex Morgan, at the wheel of a Renault Megane RS TCR car, actually raced with us at Brands Hatch last year. Well, I say raced, but actually spent most of the time in the pit lane with what was at the time still very much a car in development. Well, it's now been developed and is very rapid, and for a while he looked as though he might have been on the front row of the grid yesterday, but as the times improved at the end, he dropped down to 6th position and 5th within TCR UK. So, the grid has been cleared. The race will get underway very shortly. A green flag lap though first. I don't know whether they'll get 1 or 2 green flag laps here, because this, whilst they did have some damp running yesterday morning in free practice, they haven't had any since then. But as I say, the track is drying, and it looks as though slick tyres will be the way to go, but the early laps are going to be rather lively, I think. So off they go then, onto the green flag lap, and what a sight they make as well. Nice to have a big grid of cars, a nice mix of TCR, NGTC, and the S2000 car, which unfortunately has not got going from the back of the grid, that of Richard Woods. So already another mechanical issue at the pit, and now I can see out of the window he's got going. He's delayed getting away. And Richard Woods hopefully will be able to get through these races without too many mechanical issues, because the car has potential to be quite quick, I think, actually. And it will be fascinating to see how an S2000 car, which we haven't seen racing yet in the TCT, shapes up against some of the more modern machinery, actually. The field works their way down the hill. You can see Lewis Kent, the orange and white Hyundai i30N TCR. And Lewis Kent, who lined up 3rd on the grid, has to keep an eye on the 2nd of the green and white Seat. You can see it there. Number 61, James Turkington, the Northern Irish Rally Championship leader, has to try and do some overtaking here, I think, realistically, to try and keep within reach of Lewis Kent. The grid then sees Henry Neal line up on pole position. He took pole position by 92 1,000ths of a second in what was by far and away the tightest session of the year so far, arguably the tightest in the series history. Henry Neal on pole position by less than a tenth of a second over Darrell Wilson, who is our top TCR UK car. You can see him there, the green DW Racing Vauxhall Astra TCR car. Then you've got Adam Morgan, BTCC star, who was only 6 1,000ths of a second further back in 3rd position. Then the first World Championship contenders, Lewis Kent in the Hyundai. Nick Halstead is back this weekend. He ran well here on the Grand Prix circuit earlier on this season. He lines up 5th on the grid with Alex Morgan in the Megane 6th. The 4th row is where we find the points leader then, James Turkington, car number 61, with this 16-point advantage that he holds with 2 races to go. He can finish behind Lewis Kent in these 2 races and still wrap up the title, but he'd rather not, and he'll be looking to try and, as I said, get on terms with his rival if he can. Alongside him, perhaps slightly concerningly, will be a Holford Schwasser Racing Honda Civic NGTC car being driven by a Neal, but this time Will Neal, in the son of touring car star Matt. Then Darren Lewis and Paul Taylor, the first of the 2 VW Satchel from Team Hard Racing. Josh Coggan has Stuart Lyons in Rob Collard's 2019 BTCC Power Max Racing Vauxhall Astra. Stuart had a couple of high-speed spins yesterday, but was still his usual chipper self coming into today, and was looking forward to getting back out on the grid, with Richard Woods lining up right at the back. So that sets the scene then. It's a damp track. It's going to be a fascinating race this then for the TCR UK Championship. 23 minutes plus a lap the distance. Henry Neal on pole position. Darrell Wilson looking for his first ever victory. Likewise, Adam Morgan. Lewis Kent trying to close in on the championship leader. James Turkington has to make some progress from the 4th row of the grid. This should be a good one. The revs start to rise. There's a bit of creeping from Darrell Wilson there from the 1st row of the grid. That might yield a penalty a bit later on, but the race is underway. And a good start made by Neal from the front row of the grid. A good start made by Morgan and Lewis Kent as well, who tries to go to the outside of Darrell Wilson. And Lewis Kent tries to go, he can't find a way through, surely. Had to back out of it, and contact would not be advisable for Lewis. A non-finish would pretty much end his championship hopes. James Turkington knows out wide as well. The 2 widest cars through the first corner, well, were our championship rivals before Stuart Lyons got nerfed off by Paul Taylor. And unfortunately, the Astra is in the gravel and looks rather beached to me. Down the hill they come then, the TCR cars all getting themselves together. Lewis Kent trying to muscle his way through here. He's in a Morgan sandwich at the moment. Adam Morgan in front of him, Alex behind, but Lewis is out wide again and will lose traction out of the old hairpin. Will Neal gets alongside too. Will Neal's had a rocket ship start, hasn't he, from 8th on the grid, and I think is about to go into about 4th position as they go up the hill, but they're off, and Lewis Kent's on the grass with him. Lewis Kent is off the road. Will Neal, I think, has tangled with him, and he is in the barriers, but Lewis Kent is off the road. Where does he rejoin? Let's hope he does so safely as they come out of McLean's corner. Not too much damage done to Will Neal's car, but Lewis Kent is in the gravel trap. The safety car's being thrown, but Kent is at the back of the grid, and behind now, critically, his championship rival, James Turkington. That really was the worst possible start for Lewis Kent, who, for a brief moment on the run into the first corner, looked as though he might be able to get into 2nd position, but then he was on the outside line through Redgate, through the old hairpin, ended up running wide, and then we have to assume there was contact with Will Neal because the 2 of them were together on track. They both suddenly veered right and appeared into our next shot, very much off the road. Thankfully, though, they will both be able to continue. Will Neal picks his way back onto the road with minimal damage. I don't think Lewis's car has sustained any damage, but had to traipse through the gravel, so he'll be trying to get rid of any gravel that's now lodged itself within the wheel wells as he comes across the start-finish line. Well, that was about as dramatic a first lap as we could have anticipated. Henry Neal leads the way. Darrell Wilson is 2nd. Adam Morgan is 3rd. There's the reason for the safety car, by the way. Stuart Lyons off in the gravel at Redgate corner. Alex Morgan is in 4th position. Nick Halstead 5th and James Turkington 6th. Crucially, that is 5th place in the TCR UK portion of the race. So he is outscoring Lewis Kent for the time being. Lewis is down in 10th place overall, but only 1 position behind actually in TCR terms. But now the trouble is for Lewis to get back onto terms with the TCR cars. He has to overtake some non-TCR cars, all of whom are just out there for their own benefit. They don't really care too much about this championship scrap that's going on. The other concern I have for Lewis Kent is that radiator, which does appear to be rather full of grass. Paul Taylor is in the Team Hard VW Passat after contact that he had with Stuart Lyons, so they're just checking the car over. There's no damage with these BTCC cars. They bounce well, and they are accustomed to a tad of body contact, and you can see the car looks okay as it rejoins the circuit. So Paul Taylor back into the race. We will have only therefore lost 1 driver on the opening lap, who is championship boss Stuart Lyons, slightly ironically, but I'm sure will have his own version of what happened there at Redgate. We didn't see how the contact started, simply that it had been made, and oh, now that's Will Neal. How's he ended up there? Because did he come through at the end of that lap? He did. So he's in trying to catch up to the pack, appears to have spun off the road, and he's now beached at McLean's. So that's truly bizarre. Will Neal going off on the safety car, which never tends to go down too well, and for obvious reasons, because the safety car's out because marshals are attending an incident, and yes, you're supposed to catch up to the back of the pack, but in a safe and leisurely manner. But Will Neal appears to have had a moment, unless, of course, given the benefit of the doubt, he may have broken up the car after the off that he had on the first lap. But Will Neal then now very much is out of the race, and that will unfortunately extend his safety car from here, I think. Not good news really for Lewis Kent, who's heading into the pit lane. Now this is sensible because that grill is absolutely full of grass, and that will not be too much of an issue now, but as soon as they start going racing, the engine temperatures will skyrocket, and he'll be out of the race and could do permanent damage to the engine. So it makes sense whilst we're in the safety car to come to the pit lane to try and get that sorted. That's exactly what they're doing. Look, they're clearing the radiator out of the grass. Look at that. Oh, Jonathan Palmer will be happy, won't he? Well, I suppose Lewis has given him a free bit of grass cutting over there at Starkey's and Schwann's curve. No damage done to the car, but at least externally, we can't let those engine temperatures get too high. You'll lose performance, first of all, but more importantly, as I said, you can damage the engine quite badly. So a precaution there, bringing Lewis in to get that seat. There's still chunks of turf sort of ejecting itself from within the car, but as long as they've got it out of the radiating, there's nothing in the brake system as well. That's the other place you don't want gravel and dirt and mud to get, because that can of course cause its own problems. But that doesn't seem to be an issue. They certainly don't seem to think it is. They've cleared the radiator out and sent him back on his way, so he'll catch the back of the queue, hopefully without spinning off the road, and we will be watching him with interest when we go racing again to see if he can get going. I've just seen out of my window a Power Max Racing Vauxhall Astra going by, so Stuart Lyons has been retrieved from the gravel trap and has got back underway. So Stuart allowed, it would appear, to continue in the race, and he's lost at least one lap, hasn't he? I think he might have lost 2 laps possibly. We'll wait for the timing screen to update itself, but he's certainly not on the lead lap, so he won't be able to gain any more positions unless others drop off the road, which may be possible. So, we take stock of the situation now a little bit after that dramatic first lap. Looking good at the moment for James Turkington, but there you can see Lewis Kent, so he's not that far behind him. There will be 1, 2, 3 cars, I believe, between himself and Turkington. None of them are TCR cars, so he's only actually 1 position in class behind. So the points margin will not increase by a huge amount. So as things stand, it would still go down to the final race. The pressure would very much still be on James Turkington to deliver a good result in the final round of the championship this afternoon. But the prospect of Lewis Kent gaining ground is fairly likely. He's certainly going to be going for it, I know that much. And he's actually got 4 cars, because he's got all of the team hard cars in front of him. Paul Taylor, after his pit stop, actually got back ahead of Lewis whilst he was in the pits. So his first target will be Paul Taylor, then Darren Lewis, former MX5 racer, before moving over to the Racing Cup, as did Paul Taylor, and as did Josh Coggan, who's in the other team hard car when he is in 12. Josh Coggan, championship contender, in fact, in the VW Racing Cup this year, another championship run by Stuart Lyons. Passat, I guess, is a natural next step on the ladder for Josh and for Darren and for Paul, who have VW experience and are clearly evaluating a possible career in touring car racing, as indeed all the cars out there, of course, whether that be TCR or various other championships. Touring car trophy caters for the official TCR UK class as part of it, but it's been this sort of intermingling of classes that's actually produced some of the best racing this year. And it's been a format that people had their doubts about, let's be honest, at the start of the year, but it does seem to have worked, and it's nice to have our biggest grid of the year at the end of the year, the final round of the championship. It's always nice to go out on a high, as we did last year, actually, with a good grid here at Donington. Some really good racing in that final meeting, albeit a significantly damper meeting than this one has been so far. I don't think there is actually any more rain forecast today, though, so this should be the last of the wet running that they have to contend with, really. There's our points leader, James Turkington, who a week ago watched his older brother Colin wrap up a record-equaling 4th British touring car title in the most dramatic of circumstances. It doesn't look as though James is going to make this particularly easy for himself this weekend either, but it is a rare thing to have 2 members of the same family competing at a reasonably high level in motor racing, and so if we could have a Turkington taking the crown in the 2 biggest touring car championships in the UK, that would be quite something. Safety car lights are out though, we're about to go racing once again, and Henry Neal becomes the pace car. He will decide when the pace increases, which it has already. He accelerates out of the final corner and tries to leave the TCR UK battle behind. That is already starting to kick off though. The Morgans have got themselves together. Adam Morgan in the Cupra, Alex Morgan in the McGann, no relation between the 2 of them incidentally. There's James Turkington, who's got Josh Coggan behind him now. To reiterate the point, if he starts losing places to these TCT cars, it makes no difference whatsoever to his points haul. It does, in theory though, allow Lewis Kent to go close in on him, but Lewis has dropped way back on this restart for some reason, so I don't know whether he had a moment coming to the start of the restart of the race, but there you can see Lewis has really dropped away from the rest of the pack, so I'm concerned now that there may be some sort of an issue with that car. So only saving grace is that Turkington is not really going away with the rest of the field either, but Daryl Wilson is absolutely up for this, isn't he? He's already leading the TCR element of the race, but he wants an outright race victory. He's got Henry Neal, in his sights, and the DW Racing Vauxhall Astra is a new beast this weekend. I don't know where they found this speed from, but I'm very glad to see that they have, because they've been one of the biggest supporters of TCR UK over the last 2 years, and it would be really fitting actually to see them round out the season with a good result. Of course, they're running ballast free, or certainly low on ballast, because they're not been on the podium all that often this season. That's another point to make about Lewis Kent and James Turkington. Of course, they're both carrying success ballast after their good results last time out. Turkington is actually the heaviest car on the grid, success ballast wise, which won't be helping him. This car, though, is fairly light, the Daryl Wilson car. It's certainly lighter than the Honda in front of it, and that is possibly helping Daryl to be able to take the fight to Henry Neal at this stage of the race. 12 3/4 minutes still left on the clock. They drop down into the old hairpin, and through that sequence of corners, that seems to be where Daryl's got the edge, and he's had a nice run into the old hairpin there. May be able to have a go on the run up the hill. James Turkington, meanwhile, trying to fend off the Team Hard Brigade. It's still Josh Coggan filling his mirrors, but Darren Lewis got himself ahead of Richard Woods last time around. And here comes Coggan to the outside. Is he going to go up the inside of James Turkington? I think he will. The leaders together as well, but Henry Neal hangs on. What's going on with Turkington? No, that's what we need to see for the championship battle. Watch the background, and Turkington's fended them off. As I say, it won't lose him any points, but he wants to keep this nice buffer that he's got over Lewis Kent of now 4 cars between himself and Lewis Kent, who is slowly catching back up to the rear of the train, but not ultra rapidly, it must be said. Richard Woods pulls to the inside of Darren Lewis and goes back ahead of the Passat, coming out of Coppice Corner. And here comes Coggan, looking to the inside of James Turkington, who may just let him go now. It's a bit damp and slippery there. He cannot risk any contact here that can take him out of the race. And he slots back in behind the Passat. James Turkington, he's now only got 3 cars between himself and Kent, who still hasn't actually made any progress himself. He's still down in 11th place at the moment, and 6th within TCR. There's Adam Morgan from the right corner, getting away from Alex Morgan, but not lapping on the pace of the leaders. The fastest lap belongs to Henry Neal, who was about just under 4/10 quicker than the second place car, which is being given a drive-through penalty. This is Daryl Wilson being given a drive-through penalty, heartbreakingly, but it's for that creeping that he did at the start of the race. Paul Taylor and Lewis Kent almost come together at the same part of the circuit that they nearly tangled in testing yesterday. And I think that was actually a similar situation where Paul was maybe trying to get out of his way. Daryl Wilson, though, undeterred. Oh, he hits Will Neal, who goes off the road, and the race leader is going backwards down the grass. Can he stop the car? He's going to be joining the track right in front of everybody else. Thankfully, they miss him, but Henry Neal will be absolutely livid with that. Daryl Wilson has taken the lead of the race, but has a drive-through penalty to serve anyway, so that means that this man, Adam Morgan, will very shortly inherit the lead. Well, that will be a talking point after the race, no doubt about it. Daryl Wilson saw a gap on the inside. Henry Neal moved over to cover. They met in the middle, and it was Henry by far that came off worse. Wilson, I think, has dived for the pit lane, so Adam Morgan, on his TCR UK debut, leads the way with Alex Morgan in second position. And this, of course, will have championship significance for James Turkington and Lewis Kent, because that car is a TCR UK car, and it rejoins behind both of them. So Daryl Wilson losing that ground helps both James and Lewis actually to score a couple of extra points for themselves. Now you can see that Lewis still isn't on terms with James Turkington. I do wonder if there's some damage maybe after that contact earlier on that he had with Will Neal. So neither of the Neals coming out of this race particularly well. Will is out of it, and Henry, I think, has rejoined, has he not? Yeah, down in 10th position, but will not be a happy man. So deep breath, everybody. Still got nearly 10 minutes of this race to go. James Turkington comes through. They're now in 5th position within TCR. There is a bit of damage to the back of his car, isn't there? Look, a bit of, or is that just a sticker that's peeled away? It's hard to tell. He may have received a nudge from somebody. I think that his bodywork is hanging loose, but it shouldn't be affecting his performance. Lewis Kent, though, needs now to get on with this. He has to try and get ahead of Richard Woods and Darren Lewis as swiftly as he can, because James Turkington now is in some clean air. He's starting to find a bit of a rhythm, and the Northern Irish driver, the championship leader, is getting away, but Kent makes his move up the inside of Richard Woods. So that's for 8th position overall. Doesn't gain many championship points, but gets him closer to the man that he really needs to beat, James Turkington, who, in real terms, well, Turkington comes through now 4th place overall because Nick Halstead has dropped down the order. Yes, so there is Nick. What happened to Nick Halstead? He's behind them now. but was well ahead of them. He was right up in the top 5 a lap ago, so Nick Halstead's had a moment somewhere as well. So, right, so it all changes again now, doesn't it? There's Turkington now 3rd in TCR, whilst Kent is 4th. But in real terms, there's only about 2 seconds between them on the road, so Lewis Kent is getting closer. Nick Halstead all over the road, though. Darrell Wilson goes back on the inside through the old hairpin. So the Vauxhall Astra gains 1 more position. That'll put him into 8th place overall, 5th in TCR. That is how close it's getting between our top 2 in the championship. Lewis Kent all of a sudden has found an extra gear and is now starting to attack Darren Lewis. If he gets past the Passat, then the next car in front of him will be his championship rival. He's up the inside into Coppice Corner. Don't make contact, Darren Lewis trying to have his own race here, but also the last thing he wants to do is take out one of our TCR title contenders. But I think Kent should be able to go through. The Hyundai i30N always has been good in a straight line, and he sweeps through on the run down the exhibition straight. Now they are almost together. Lewis Kent needs to get himself ahead of James Turkington, though. He can't finish, if he finishes behind him, it'll still mathematically be possible for him to take the title, but realistically, he needs to try and take some points out of him. Big lock up there for one of them, just Cobb, wasn't it, in 3rd position into Redgate Corner. The gap then between Turkington and Kent, 1.27 seconds. Henry Neal, by the way, fired up Henry Neal, has just improved upon his own fastest lap at 1:16.412. And he's actually caught this gaggle now. And look at this is some good racing. Richard Woods, Nick Halstead and Darrell Wilson. Those two have swapped again, haven't they? Because Wilson got ahead of Halstead down here a lap ago, but Nick is back in front of him now. And Darrell Wilson looking to try and regain the position, whilst also being caught by the man that he tangled with a few laps ago whilst fighting for the lead. Lewis Kent, though, has caught James Turkington and is looking to try and find a way through. James Turkington driving as defensively as he dares, but Lewis Kent is not going to be backwards and coming forwards here. He knows how significant this next overtake could be. Is there much chance of him catching anybody else in TCR? Well, perhaps not, but there is still the possibility that Turkington could lose more ground, of course. Down the straight they go then, Lewis Kent filling the mirrors of the championship leader as they hit the brakes once again. They're on the 10th lap of the race now. The race leader, Adam Morgan, by the way, has just set the fastest lap of the race. He's also leading in TCR. This is the fight for 3rd place in TCR, though, and it's the fight for the championship. Lewis Kent is clearly the quicker of the two at this stage of the race, but James Turkington won't just move out of his way. He's going to fight this if he can. I'm sure they'll show each other plenty of respect, at least I hope they will. They're certainly 2 very respectful drivers for the most part, but with a championship on the line, who knows? This is touring car racing after all. They're also, of course, holding each other up now and bringing Darren Lewis back into it. Here comes Kent, they're around the outside through the Grainer curve. That was phenomenally brave stuff, and he goes through them. So Lewis Kent ahead of James Turkington, and now for the first time all day, really, since the start of the race at least, the gap is coming down, not up. So this is brilliant news for Kent, not good news for Turkington, although not a complete disaster right now. It would be worse if that had been the move for the class lead, because there's a bigger points difference between 1st and 2nd than there is between 3rd and 4th. Turkington losing another place now, though, to Darren Lewis with McLean's. But Darren being in the TCT class, that doesn't make a huge difference. Nick Halstead and Henry Neal had tangled, I think, in the background there, hadn't they? And Halstead was on a one-way trip to the gravel by the looks of it. I was hoping he dug his way out of that, but Henry Neal is rather robustly, by the looks of it, moving his way back up the order. So Kent then up into 4th position overall. Now, what's the gap? Well, Josh Coggan, the next man in front of him, and Josh has actually just set the fastest lap of the race, 1:15.3. So the next gap is 7.2 seconds, and he is not a TCR car. So realistically, unless either of the Morgans fall off the road in front, it looks as though 3rd place in TCR will be as good as it gets for Lewis Kent. So the next thing we look at is there any prospect of James Turkington losing any ground? The answer is probably not, because he's got about 5 or 6 seconds in hand over the next TCR car, who is there, Darrell Wilson in the green Astra. Nick Halstead is nowhere to be seen, and there he is at the top of the hill, so he did get going again after that sideways moment I caught a glimpse of at the claims. It's been a really topsy-turvy race, hasn't it? Darrell Wilson and Henry Neal shared the front row together. They're now 9th and 8th respectively in the race, whilst Adam and Alex Morgan have sort of picked their way through the chaos to get to the front of the field. Those two are separated by 3.2 seconds, incidentally, but the faster of the two last time around was Alex Morgan in the McGann. Richard Woods we're watching here, then in the S2000 spec Ford Focus with Henry Neal right on his rear bumper now, trying to find a way through. This would be for class position, remember. This is for 3rd place in the Touring Car Trophy and for 7th position overall. As I said earlier on, there are no... Oh, I'll get to that in a moment because Stuart Lyons is off again. Well, not off technically, but he's pointing the wrong way at McLean's. Thankfully this time he doesn't require any outside assistance to get going. And if he was assisted into that spin, then it'll be an even grumpier Brummie on board that Vauxhall Astra. But he has continued. He's explored a bit of the Donington Park scenery this weekend with Stuart on his return to NGTC machinery, which he hasn't raced for a couple of seasons now, of course, since he last raced in BTCC with Maximum Motorsport. They've announced this week they're evaluating a return to that series, but they're also, of course, running cars in this championship and in VW racing, so Stuart has many fingers in many pies, it would appear. Nice to see him getting out there racing as well, albeit not terribly successfully on this occasion, but we don't know exactly how he ended up in his second spot of trouble. Where's James Turkington then? Quite a long way behind Lewis Kent, so James, for whatever reason, just doesn't have the speed. Darrell Wilson does, though. Now, Darrell's just got himself ahead of Richard Woods, which is for 8th position overall. Darrell's previous lap was 1:15.69, Turkington's 1:17.4, so Darrell was 8/10 quicker than James Turkington. Where I'm going with this is that Darrell Wilson is realistically the only driver now that could overtake James Turkington and take TCR points away from him. So if that were to happen, that, of course, would hugely benefit Lewis Kent. And given the speed that Darrell Wilson's found this weekend, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, actually. There is your race leader, though, Adam Morgan, on his debut in TCR racing, TCR UK racing. He's raced TCR cars in other series already this year. In fact, he's partnered with Stuart Lyons in a couple of Brit car races earlier on in the year. But this is his first time out in TCR UK. Certainly seems to be enjoying himself. He's running well, but that is still the fastest man on the track. Josh Coggan, who really has got on terms with this VW Passat, hasn't he? Third position at the moment, another new fastest like last time, 1:13.9, and he's now only 3.6 seconds off the race leader. He's off into the gravel, and that was the curse of the commentator if ever I've heard it. Off through the gravel at Coppice he goes. Many a great racing driver has made that mistake, though, particularly in the wet conditions. You go over a blind crest as you turn in. Just as you turn in, the car goes light, and so often want to swap ends or simply understeer off the road. And Coggan sadly loses a couple of positions out of that as well. He was third, but Lewis Kent and Darren Lewis have gone back through. And, well, Josh perhaps getting a bit overexcited there at the prospect of maybe winning the race, but just a bit too much speed carried into Coppice corner, and off he went. Carries on his way, though. A minute and 20 seconds left on the clock, so time for another few laps yet, because we've got 23 minutes plus a lap, remember. Darren Lewis now sets the fastest lap as he benefits from his teammate's error and moves into fourth position. 1:13.5 is the lap time. The track, of course, is getting quicker. Now, what of James Turkington? Is he still being caught by Darrell Wilson? The answer is yes, by 1.6 seconds on the previous lap. We could do with seeing that, really, because James Turkington is now in real danger, actually, of losing another position to a TCR car. He's got a buffer at the moment in the shape of Henry Neal, although how much comfort that gives James Turkington, I'm not too sure. But Henry Neal is lapping even quicker than Darrell Wilson, actually, at the moment. So let's see where they are, then. They should be the next group of cars through. There's Turkington. Someone else is off. I can hear it, and it's Coggan again. So this time at McLean's, he's made the mistake, and the track is now more gravel than tarmac. Look at that. That was a brilliant shot as the gravel spews everywhere behind him. That, though, is the man on the move, and the man that could actually have quite an impact in this championship battle, because Darrell Wilson, who we know was the fastest TCR car here yesterday in qualifying, he was quick in free practice too, he could potentially, before this race is over, find a way ahead of James Turkington. There's a car between them still at the moment, but these gaps are all coming down. Out of the chicane they go. Darrell Wilson across the start-finish line then to complete the 15th lap of the race. The time has ticked down, but we'll get another lap in here because the leads have already gone through. Turkington being caught by Neal then. So Turkington did a 15.7, Neal a 14.7, Wilson a 14.3. This is phenomenal stuff. And, well, that's another 1.4 seconds he took out of him. And he's about 2 seconds behind in total. So he may have time, but it's going to be touch and go, this. James Turkington might be able to hang on. And actually, ironically, Turkington's best friend right now is a Neal. Words we don't say all that often, but Henry Neal is right now a handy little buffer between himself and his nearest TCR rival. There's Will Neal, who's caught Paul Taylor now. Paul Taylor, though, is laps ahead of him, of course, because Will Neal had those couple of gravelly excursions earlier on, but clearly has been able to rejoin the race. This is not the position there. Paul Taylor running at the moment in 11th position, Will Neal in 13th, 2 laps behind him. They head through the old hairpin. This, though, is the battle to watch. James Turkington starting to feel increased pressure now from Henry Neal. We are going on to the final lap of the race now. Remember, it is 23 minutes plus 1 lap, and Darrell Wilson is all out of shape out of the chicane, and that will cost him time, of course, so that might actually be enough to save James Turkington's bacon here, because he's actually comes across the line that time, having lapped about the same sort of speed as Darrell Wilson, but Henry Neal is now proving to be a bit of a thorn in his side. Through Redgate, back down the Crater curve for the final time, and James Turkington, now he can afford to give this place away. The only effect it will have really is that it loses him an extra grid position for race number 2 later on. They start race 2, remember, the way in which they finish race 1, and so James Turkington would be starting 1 position further back on the grid. There'd be 1 more car then between himself and Lewis Kent, so that would not be ideal. Lewis Kent, by the way, still in 3rd position, is lapping as quickly as the leaders, but no quicker, so he's still about 9 seconds behind the top 2. This is the battle then. James Turkington running through Coppice Corner. The Morgans, though, are at the line already, and Adam Morgan takes his first ever win in TCR UK. A pretty dominant performance in the end, with Alex Morgan second. Lewis Kent will come home third. What will happen to James Turkington, though? I think he might be able to hang on, but Henry Neal's having one last lunge up the inside into the chicane. James Turkington sees him coming and sensibly leaves the door open, but can Darrell Wilson get the run to the flag? He might be able to get the power down well into drag race to the line, and I think Wilson will do it. Oh, James Turkington loses another place on the line, and that will be significant because Darrell Wilson takes 4th position in TCR. Oh, you can see what James was thinking there. He didn't want to get tangled up with a TCT car. That wasn't worth any points, but he was so slow through the chicane as a result that Darrell Wilson pips him on the line, and I don't think that... I think James might be regretting that maybe ever so slightly now. What a shame for James, but a brilliant recovery drive actually from Henry and Darrell after their earlier contact. There may be some discussions about that afterwards. Darrell, of course, lost the ground with the penalty, not for contact, because of a jump start. They both worked their way up the order actually rather nicely. So Adam Morgan wins, Alex Morgan is second, and Lewis Kent is third. They're all TCR cars, so that will have, as I said, an effect on the championship. And well, what is that going to mean? Well, the 25 points, of course, will go to Adam Morgan, with the 18 points for second place man Alex Morgan, and it's then 15 points for 3rd place for Lewis Kent. So he's 3rd place overall, he's 3rd within TCR as well. Then it's Darren Lewis and Josh Coggan. Henry Neal 6th, 7th Darrell Wilson, but that crucially was 4th place in TCR. James Turkington is 8th and 5th place in TCR. So by my reckoning, that's worth 10 points, is it not? So I think it comes down by 5 points, so it will be 11 on my very rough calculations going into the final race. But we'll of course get that confirmed before that final race gets underway a little bit later on this afternoon. The rest of the results there scrolling through. That was a very, very tense race, and what a race it was. Possibly the race of the season, actually. I know a lot of the action was generated from people making mistakes and going off and little bits of contact here and there, but it was certainly entertaining, and it goes to show that that little bit of a bigger grid that we're enjoying this weekend does have an effect. There is Adam Morgan, then pulls into the pit lane, and he is a winner for first time in TCR UK. He can't be run by Sicily Motorsport. He's actually teammates to James Turkington. We were debating this morning whether or not Adam might sort of be the sacrificial lamb for Sicily, to maybe help out his teammate James Turkington in his title bid. But really, nothing Adam Morgan had done there. He was a country mile ahead of anybody else. That gets a very well-deserved round of applause as he comes out of the pit lane. So Adam Morgan takes the victory. He'll shortly take the helmet off and have a word with Bryn Lucas, who I'm sure is on hand to chat to our top 3. And I think actually, as happy as Adam Morgan is, he may be even there may be an even happier driver on that podium in the shape of Lewis Kent, especially given what happened at the start of the race when it all looked like it was going completely wrong as wrong could be for the Hyundai. But Lewis was able to bounce back remarkably well there and score some valuable championship points. Doesn't take a huge amount of points out of James Turkington. He'd have rather won the race, but he'll lose some success ballast now for race number 2 with Lewis Kent. So that may well improve his prospects then. Right, enough from me. Let's head down to Bryn, who's with our podium finishers.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I've got the race winner here. Debut race winner, TCT and TCR. Well, this is phenomenal. We've seen this man top step in touring car before, but congratulations on an interesting race win for you.
Yeah, it was pretty tricky, to be fair. I know yesterday we went out in FP1. The conditions were quite similar, and there'd been 2 races out this morning. I thought it might have dried up a little bit, but the first initial lap, I was like, this is going to be tricky. And I think people was on tiptoes first couple of laps, and then I saw Darrell had a drive-through, so I thought I could just sit there and wait for that. And then Alex kept me really honest throughout the whole race. You know, he was pushing on. There's lots of mud all over the road at the chicane, so that was horrible. But you know, good result from teamwork from Sicily Motorsport. Chuffed to bits for that, and hopefully James can be a bit higher up the grid in the next one. I
was going to ask you a little bit about the incident ahead with Darrell and with Mr. Neil too. You got to see it. You were quite near to it at that moment, so you were aware that Darrell had a drive-through. It was a bit of an unusual manoeuvre from him.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't really looking that much at the accident. I was more concerned about where he was going to rejoin the track and trying to time it so I don't collect him. But yeah, I didn't really see too much of it, I'm afraid, so I can't give too much insight into it.
But nevertheless, first race in TCT and a #1 trophy.
Yeah, no, chuffed to bits. So obviously massive thank you to Sicily Motorsport, and yeah, hopefully same again in race 2.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
And that's one Morgan. Let's bring a second Morgan in. Let's speak to Alex Morgan. So a second place for you. This isn't bad, is it?
No, I was really happy with that, to be fair. I knew I had to keep it clean. I didn't want to get involved in the championship fight, and after the first few laps we were in a really good position, and I lost a bit too much after the safety car restart to Adam, and as it got to about the midpoint then I felt like I had the pace in the car, but it was too much of a gap, so I wanted to come home and get a podium for them again. It's been a massive step forward with the development work that we've done, so really, really happy.
And there's a decent level of competition, particularly here at Donington Park this weekend with such a large grid for TCT. It's been its second season of TCR with TCT as well. So for you guys to be involved with a McGann, we've seen one McGann in this championship before as well, and they look pretty good out on track.
Yeah, I did the Brands race last year in the McGann, and the kind of progression that's been made with the car from then to now is phenomenal, and to show the pace that we had against obviously Adam, who's you know, very experienced BTCC driver, is absolutely brilliant. And I felt if I just managed to keep a bit closer at the restart, maybe it would be a bit more of a fight. But it was fantastic to race with him and to be trading laps, you know, lap times. So all in all, very positive.
Yeah, I remember that race at Brands last year. It really was a case of just getting the car out and seeing if it could run around an entire lap.
Yeah, and you know, we've come leaps and bounds forward since then. The car felt absolutely phenomenal. So fair play to Vukovic and to Max Racing and Wolf. It's been a lot of work gone into it, so to get this podium is just absolutely fantastic.
Well, go up there, get your trophy.
Thank you very much, cheers.
Well done. And let's bring in third place on the podium. First place really as well, actually not first place in TCR because we've got a car right here that's TCR, but a man that at one moment of this race, it looked like you'd thrown away not just the race, but your chance of winning the championship as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of a wild race for us. Yeah, we come down Craners, had a really good start. Got a little bit squeezed by Darrell into the first corner. Didn't mind that, got through it. Was all right. Followed Morgan through the Craners, come alongside him into the old hairpin. Touched a bit of dirt, and as I came through the little left-hand kink, Will was on my outside. A bit oversteer, and yeah, just glided into him. And I thought we'd run out of it, thought we'd chucked it away. Brought it back into the pits, got everything cleared, made sure everything was right. Yeah, they just come across the radio saying, just make sure you drive the best driver you can, and yeah, that's what I did.
One thing that must be driving you mad is that we're always saying, look, he's still a young driver, still developing, still learning and things like that, but it's these races that you learn more than when you're at the sharp end the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about point scores. There was me driving around halfway through that, trying to figure out the maths whilst racing. But yeah, it's more of a, these sort of races, more of a don't worry about position, worry about points. So we're going to have to see how it goes into the last race. Hopefully we can do the same. Hopefully we've got a little bit less weight now. So just going to have to try and get the jump on these two and try and get out as far as we can. And yeah, hopefully James has a bit more problems like he did in that one, and get scooted down a bit further.
I think I did a bit of maths. If my maths is correct, 13 points now is the difference. So if you could win and James comes a bit further back, you have a chance.
Yeah. Well, we can only hope now. We can only see. If we do have it on the on equal points, it goes back to wins. Then obviously I'll win as well. So we're just going to hope. We're just going to see how it plays out, and yeah, we're just going to try our best.
It was a well-thought podium, not a first, which is what you wanted, but a third place. Must be at least happy with that, consider what happened.
Yeah, over the moon. Can't thank the guys back of the team enough for all the effort they do. Brilliant car they give me every time I go out, and you can see by the time, see how I come through the pack. So no, I can't ask for anything more from them guys.
Well done.
Thank you.
There you go, you heard from one of the championship protagonists there, Lewis Kent. We're going to see what happens when we go to the second race, the final race of the season, round number 10 with TCT, round number 10 of TCR UK as well. James Turkington leads the way, I think by 13 points. Lewis Kent just 13 points back, all to play for. Make sure you join us in a little bit for that one that's happening this afternoon. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back here at Donington Park for the OSS Championship, Andy McEwan will be back to talk us through that one, and we will then be whetting our appetite. Just after lunch, we're going to be seeing TCR, TCT, race number 2 of the day. We'll see you back here very soon.